Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another magnificent session of OLC4O Term 2B, brought to you by Wausau Distance Education Center. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty, broadcasting out of our Sulicout studio, and today is Thursday, April the 27th, 2023. Today's class marks class number 8 of our 35 classes together. And we are finishing up our discussion of, well, we're not finishing our discussion of Unit 1, but we are continuing our discussion of Unit 1. Today we're going to look at Assignment 9, which is another writing assignment. So we will continue with our discussion of the writing process and getting into the technical details of how the English language works, learning some new words, learning some new concepts, exploring some punctuation, some grammar. So all those things that I love, and I know that some of you may not, maybe might not love as much as I do. Maybe you do, but I'm hoping to sort of bring my enthusiasm about these topics to today's class and sort of challenge what you know and give you some strategies for completing assignment number 9, which is another, like I mentioned, another writing assignment. So, and I know that those can be the most challenging for some students. And I just wanted to start off today's class with a note of positivity and just mention that I've seen this with so many students who, when they start the chorus, they maybe doubt their writing abilities and they wonder if they're going to be able to complete the chorus. And I've never had a student who, didn't have enough skills to complete the chorus, even when they had doubted themselves and had literally said they had no writing skills. And they often do this in writing that is is very well done, right? So I'm just giving you a shout out to all you learners out there to believe in yourself and know that it does get easier the more you do it. And you just got to get some words down on the page. And especially for these first few writing assignments, you have to you really just got to get them out there. You just got to write them down. You've got to get them to myself. You've got to hand them over to your teacher. Just get them done. And, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm a very fair marker, and especially with your first ones, right? It's just I just want to see your baseline as a writer, and as long as you follow along with the class and use some of the tips and strategies that I bring up with you, I guarantee you everything will work out fine. And then as soon as you get the ball rolling, as soon as you get your first assignment out, then you're going to get some detailed feedback from myself. And then you're going to use that feedback to carry you forward, to keep the ball moving, keep momentum alive. And, just very quickly, please note the deadlines coming up. If you're a potential grad, you've got a deadline of June 9th for submitting work. If you're not a potential grad, I would love to see your work by June 16th. And if you can't make the June 16th deadline, then you have to register for the summer term. And over the summer, you can submit assignments, but hopefully you can have your work in by June 16th. And for all you potential grads out there, please keep that June 9th deadline in mind. If you miss that deadline, you may have to wait a year to graduate. So I don't want you to miss that. So here we are. We're working on Unit 1, and we are in Week 2 of the course. So today is the last day of Week 2. Our last class of Week 2. And then next week we'll go into Week 3. And then we'll do Week 3, we'll cover unit assignments 11 to 18, which will bring us to the end of Unit 1. So next week we'll be doing 2 to 3 assignments. What is that? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That's 8. So yeah, we'll be doing about 2 assignments a day, and then we'll finish off our discussion of Unit 1, and then we'll move on to Unit 2. So thanks for listening to us. If you're on the airwaves, that's 91.9 FM. broadcasting out of our Sioux Lookout office or perhaps on Bell ExpressVu, channel 972. Please note you can phone the studio at 1-800-465-7144. That's our toll-free number. Or locally at 1-807-737-4017. Or you can join us on Zoom by going to zoom.us, entering the meeting ID, which is 417-6699-799. Please reach out to the WASA office if you have any questions about participating in classes live. If you can't go on live, if you can't be with us live on the airwaves, you can always check out my YouTube channel at Laverty WASA. Just search that. You'll find my channel. And then check out my OLC4O playlist. Reach out to me at mlaverty@nnecschools.org. That's my email address. You can find me on Facebook and add me as a friend or send me a message on Messenger. So that's Laverty space WAHSA. Look for me on Facebook, Laverty WASA. If you want to talk to somebody in the office, you can phone our Sioux Lookout office at 1-807-737-1488 or toll free at 1-800-667-3703. Or you can reach out to your local learning center, talk to your DEC, reach out to somebody to get the help that you need. I'm asking that all students reach out to their teacher. That's myself. So give me a phone call, send me a message, phone me. We got to figure out a way that you and I can talk. And I'd like you to read the study guide and Unit 1 of OLC4O and read the first chapters of our novel, Jimmy Comes Home. Try to read the first, 1 to 2 chapters of that novel. Next week, we will continue our discussion of Jimmy Comes Home, and I'll continue to read out the book on the airwaves. I'll probably read most of it over the airwaves, and we'll have some discussions about the novel as we move along in this course. So here's today's lesson. We'll do our words of the day. We will look at today's headline. We're going to look at commas for our punctuation. We'll look at our parts of speech. That's the adjectives. And then, of course, we'll look at assignment number 9. So your learning goals for today, and if you're paying attention, you'll note that this is a repetition. We have done adjectives, but it does serve repetition because adjectives are a very important part of speech that I want you to use and master and understand how to use in your writing. So we will learn how to use adjectives. We will learn the definition. Whoops. I put the wrong slide up, but that's no problem. We can fix that. You will learn how. So learn how to use an adjective, learn how to use a comma, and you'll take notes as we review assignment number 9 from Unit 1, Lesson 2. So I want you to practice using adjectives and commas in your writing. So this is your success criteria. So use adjectives and use commas in your writing. And then I'm hoping that you can use the steps outlined in today's class to complete assignment number 9 by practicing, practicing the writing process, right? My apologies there. I've got yesterday's slide decks that I did write the new ones. I just forgot to swap them into my updated slideshow. But you've got 2 success criteria. So practice using adjectives and commas in your writing assignments, and use the steps outlined in today's lesson to complete assignment 9 from Unit 1, Lesson 2, and practice the writing process. All right, so let's jump right into our words of the day. So up on the screen here, we've got, Again, it probably doesn't look or feel like spring, let alone summer where you are, but fishing season. Of course, you can ice fish, but actually being out in the lake and fishing, that season will be upon us soon. So I'm just thinking ahead. We've got a man here holding up a large fish, which I believe is a muskie. It's a large fish that he's holding up on his fishing expedition, which brings us to the word of the day. So in Anishinaabe-Moan, we've got mashkinuje, and then in English, that's known as a muskellunge, or more commonly known as the muskie. So interestingly enough, we see that mashkinuje is a compound word. So a compound word in the English language is a word that is combined when we compound two words together. So sort of like when you think about chemistry, a compound is when two or different elements come together to make a substance, like sodium and chloride come together to make salt. In this case, we've got two words, so manadad, which is ugly, and genuje, which is pike. So mashkinuje is literally an ugly pike. So it takes the adjective manada, which is ugly. So that's an adjective that we can use to describe things, and a noun, genuje. So you put those two together, and we get the ugly pike, the mashkinuje. If we look up the word pike in the English dictionary, we see that it is any of several large, slender, voracious. Love that word. So if something is voracious, it loves to eat. It's usually a hunter. A voracious freshwater fish is in the genus Esox, having a long, flat snout. A pike is also a shafted weapon, having a pointed head formerly used by infantry. A pike is a sharply pointed projection or spike, and it's the pointed end of anything, as of an arrow or a spear. And if we look at, the mouth of a pike, it does resemble the medieval weapon, the pike, that I've got up here, right? So you see, so I think, when European people came to North America, they don't have pikes and muskies in European waters. So when they discovered this fish over here, they made the association with the weapon, the pike, and that's why this fish was given that name, the pike. Okay, on to our discussion of punctuation. So today we're talking about the comma. We use commas for many reasons in our writing. So I've actually used some punctuation and then explanation. So we've got a colon here. So remember, the colon is what we use to set up an idea, to set up a list. It tells the reader, here it is. So we use commas for many reasons in our writing, colon, and then the reasons follow. So we set up introductory phrases. We separate items in a list. We add information about nouns, and we set up quotations. So that's not the only uses of a comma, but it's probably the most common usages. Now, commas are probably the most versatile and useful of the punctuation marks that we use in the English language. And then because of that, it's versatile, it's got many uses, but the more uses something has, the greater the risk that it could be misused, right? So it's probably the most misused punctuation mark, so I'm hoping I can explain a few things to you today to make sure that you are using it correctly in your writing assignments. Introductory phrases, right? So this is a great place to start, and it's something that you should be using in your writing a lot. So the introductory phrase is a very useful tool when you're writing. And when you're writing fiction, when you're writing poetry, if you're a journalist, if you're writing academic papers, the introductory phrase is very useful. So we use it. It's a group of words. Sometimes it's a single word. So it's a word or a group of words that sets up the main part of the sentence. So it's like the setup. It's like you're telling a joke, and the introductory phrase is the setup. And then what comes after is the punchline or the main idea. So many introductory phrases include prepositions. So again, prepositions tell us when something happened, and they tell us where something happened. Or they tell us a relationship, like I received a letter from my brother. Um, you know, I sent my letter to my sister. So after we arrived in Winnipeg, comma, we stopped at Tim Hortons for a meal and checked into our hotel. While many people said the restaurant was terrible, comma, my wife and I really enjoyed our meal. During the construction of the house, comma, the contractor lost most of his employees because they weren't being paid. And so if we think back to our discussion yesterday, the introductory part of the sentence is a dependent clause. It relies upon the independent clause that comes after. So we stopped at Tim Hortons for a meal and checked into our hotel. That's a complete sentence. And what you could do is you could reverse it. You could put this part of the sentence after. So you could say, we stopped at Tim Hortons for a meal and checked into our hotel after we arrived in Winnipeg. You can do that. But if you put the after we arrived in Winnipeg part first, there's got to be a comma after it. So we use that comma after the introductory phrase to set them apart. So again, sometimes we can use one word or one or two simple words to set up an introductory phrase. Like, my little brother is struggling to learn how to ride a bike. Ride a book. That's a funny mistake there. So, my little brother is struggling to ride a bike, period. However, comma, he keeps trying and gets better every day. For example, comma, this morning he scraped his knee after a bad fall and kept riding for another 20 minutes. Unfortunately, comma, there is too much rain in the forecast and we have to cancel the baseball game. So anytime you use a word like however, unfortunately, for example, meanwhile, to start a sentence, you put a comma right after it. Now, an A positive, or what we call a noun phrase, don't let the fancy language intimidate you. An A positive or a noun phrase is just a group of words that provides more information about a noun. So here's an example. Connor McDavid, comma, the NHL's current point leader, comma, is the captain of the Edmonton Oilers. Right? So you introduce a person, a place, or a thing, and then you give more information about it. And in this way, the commas come in pairs, the same way that a bracket pair works, right? So you have a comma at the start and a comma at the end. And I could put that in brackets if I wanted, right? I could put the fact that he's the NHL's current point leader in brackets, but in this case, I just chose to use the commas. Another example. My sister wants to get a tattoo of Artemis, comma, the Greek goddess of hunting. In this case, I only need to use the first comma because the sentence ends there. So I introduce Artemis, and then I give an explanation on who Artemis is. In the last example, a bull moose, comma, the biggest they had seen all weekend, comma, stepped into the road just as they were packing for home. So you write down an idea, you write down a person, place, or thing, and then you tell the reader some additional information to help explain that person, place, or thing. We also use commas to separate independent clauses. So independent clauses are joined by any of these 7 coordinating conjunctions, right? So we'll talk about conjunctions in a bit. That's another part of speech, but they are and, but, for, or, nor, so, and yet. So there weren't any tickets available for the concert, comma, so we decided to check out a different show. I invited my brother to the birthday party, but he got a flat tire on his way into town. The final exam was known to be challenging, yet all of the students received at least 70% or higher. So you have an independent clause followed by a comma, and then we get some additional information about that main idea, right? And so we use commas in coordination with a coordinating conjunction to piece our words together. So yesterday I was talking about this concept that when we write in the English language, we're building words. You know, we take words and we build up clauses, and then we combine those clauses together, and then we make a sentence. Some sentences might just be a single clause, like Jimmy comes home. That's a complete sentence. It's one clause. But you could have a sentence that goes, Jimmy comes home, but he wasn't feeling excited about it, right? That's two clauses put together. And then as you get more advanced as a writer, you start adding more and more clauses together. You start creating more complex sentences. And then maybe we can see how that works with today's article. So today's article is called Fishing Can Connect Strangers No Matter Where You Are in the World. This is by Teresa Waddington, published in the Globe and Mail, October 4th, 2022. And this is actually a first person. It's called First Person. It's a section of the Globe and Mail, and it's submitted by their readers. So some of them may or may not be professional writers. So it's interesting to see. So if you want to submit to the Globe and Mail, you can go to tgam.ca, essay guide, right? And then you might be able to submit something. So fishing can connect strangers no matter where you are in the world. So let's look at those parts of speech. What I'd like to do is I'd like to let's have a look at that headline. And this headline is one sentence. And the sentence is made up of an independent clause and a dependent clause. Remember, so an independent clause can stand alone as its own sentence. Fishing can connect strangers. That's a complete thought. It's got a subject, fishing. So again, the subject of your sentence can be a person, a place, a thing, or an idea. So in this case, it is the idea of fishing, right? So the concept of fishing. And so the article, the headline reads, Fishing can connect strangers. So fishing is our subject. Can connect strangers is what that thing does. So but what they've done is they've combined these independent clauses, and they've used a comma to do that. And it says, no matter where you are in the world, right? And so again, we could flip the order of that sentence. We could say, no matter where you are in the world, comma, fishing can connect strangers. But in either case, we would probably need that comma to separate the two, right? And that's kind of why one of the main reasons we use the comma. So I won't go into the parts of speech on this one just for time's sake, but just note that that's how that headline is constructed. And I'll read a bit of this headline. Read a bit of the article. I grew up fishing. My dad had a 16-foot tin boat with an outboard motor, and we'd zip around Charlie Lake just outside Fort St. John, BC. Mostly we'd catch walleye and pike, and he'd tell us stories of muskies. Quote, they'll come up and bite your finger clean off, quote, as we trailed our fingers in the water. We often saw other folks at the boat launch or on the dock, and without fail, we'd hail each other with, catch anything? Which would usually move into a comparison of the day's catch, or traded suggestions on lures and locations and a few ones that got away glory stories. So that's great. It's the first paragraph of the essay. It sets up the idea of the author of the story growing up, spending a lot of time fishing. You've got a great visual element, right? You've got the, you know, trailing your fingers in the water, and then the dad saying, "Watch out for those muskies; they'll bite your fingers off." Right? So it's great. You can picture it. Um, it's a tin boat. It's a 16-foot tin boat. So we got some adjectives, right? So he doesn't just simply say we're in a boat. It's a 16-foot tin boat. So he's using an adjective to make the story come alive. He's using the visual detail of trailing fingers in the water, so I can picture my fingers in the water. I can almost feel the cold water on my fingers. So it's a great opening to the article. My children are now growing up fishing. The kids were the right age to get into it when we were living in Fort McMurray, Alberta. We spent many days out on Snai or the Athabasca River, mostly catching enormous pike on big lures like 5 of diamonds or red devils. When we moved to Scotland, comma, so there we go. So there's an example of an introductory phrase. So when we moved to Scotland, comma, we kept fishing. There we caught occasional rainbow trout in the highly managed fishing ponds or mackerel in the North Sea on big ocean rods off on the harbor wall in our small town. We've lived and fished lots of places, comma, and I enjoy fishing. However, comma, there we go, another introductory phrase, my son Gordon loves to fish. He can spend a full day, comma, sun up to sundown, comma, casting his line and changing lures. When he sees someone else fishing, comma, he wants to know everything they're doing. So there's another introductory phrase. So when he sees someone fishing, comma, he does this. Did you catch anything? What lures did you use? Are you allowed to use bait here? Do the fish taste good? What's the biggest fish you've ever caught? He's relatively introverted and usually quite reluctant to talk to strangers. But if they are a kindred fisher person, he connects instantly. I like that. So that's a great example of using the semicolon. And remember, we use the semicolon to combine two sentences that could stand on their own, but they're connected. So the idea that the little boy is introverted and the fact that he connects with fisher people is great, right? So it's two related concepts that are put together. So just briefly, our part of speech of the day is the adjective. They modify or qualify nouns, and they also describe the quantity or the amount of the nouns, right? So they tell us something about a noun. They change how we might see a noun. So, if I tell you right now, picture, try to imagine, try to imagine a woman in your mind, okay? And then you imagine a woman, okay? So then I say imagine an elderly woman, okay? And then if I say imagine an African elderly woman, right? And then so the picture in your mind gets more nuanced, or it changes, right? So just keep that in mind, as you want to, if you're trying to communicate a message to your reader, you're trying to make them picture something in their minds, use adjectives to make sure that they picture what you want them to picture. So they modify a noun. So Aiden scored a beautiful goal in the third period. He didn't just score a goal, he scored a beautiful goal. And it wasn't just in any period, it was the third period. So beautiful tells me what type of goal. The adjective third tells me the number of period that he scored it in. My favorite band is Guns N' Roses, right? So favorite modifies band. It's not just any band, it's my favorite band. She packed 5 black t-shirts for her trip, right? So they're not just any t-shirts, there's 5 of them, and they are black. So 2 adjectives to describe one thing. We opened the door and found a messy hotel room. So when we opened the door, we didn't just find any hotel room, we found a messy one. We have absolute adjectives, comparative adjectives, and superlative adjectives, right? So this is a cold evening. Tonight is colder than last night. So that's making a comparison between tonight and last night. Tomorrow night might be the coldest night of the year. So if something is superlative, it's the biggest or the smallest. You know, there's nowhere else to go after that. Yeah, so sometimes we have multiple adjectives, 2 or more, to describe the same noun. So this is going to be a long, cold night. We can use the comma. Again, that's another use of the comma to combine them. Or we could say this is going to be a cold and long winter. But we wouldn't say this is going to be a long, cold winter. So we put the comma in there. It's going to be a long, cold winter, or a cold and long winter. And then, like all rules in the English language, there is an exception. So if we say, these are my old leather boots, that's correct. We wouldn't say, these are my old, comma, leather boots, right? Because the word old, in this case, is modifying one idea, right? Leather boots, right? So that gets really confusing, and it's very, very technical. But just that's sort of like the level of nerding out on the English language that I'll take you to. And most English teachers are probably not going to get that into it, or penalize you if you make that mistake. But just note that that's technically how the rule works. So some adjectives tell us, like who it belongs to. Like, this coffee is cold, that coffee is hot. These jokes are the funniest I've ever heard. Those people over there are my friends. And sometimes adjectives work like pronouns. So my sister bought me a new pair of shoes. I really like them. So them stands in for pair of shoes. Pronouns always stand in for something else, right? Okay. There we go. So let's break into our discussion of assignment 9 today, okay? And then I'm hoping I'm going to do a bit of writing, and I'm going to try to incorporate some of these lessons into my writing and just demonstrate how it works, right? All right, so Unit 1, Lesson 2, Assignment 9 is a journal entry about learning. It's worth 15 marks. So you're writing 3 paragraphs, and each paragraph should be at least 5 sentences in length. So 250 to 300 words. Sorry, I should make a note of that. So that's total, right? So this is the that's your total word count, right? Should be about 250 to 300 words. So each paragraph should be about 100 words long, maybe 75. So somewhere in that ballpark, right? So that's just a rough guideline, right? So, and each paragraph has a predetermined topic. So you have to follow along with that with that wording, right? Not that wording, but you got to stick to that topic. So sometimes in this course you're given an open-ended writing assignment where you get a general topic and you can decide what the paragraphs are going to be about. But in this case, you've got to stick to these assigned topics. So paragraph 1 is about you being an active participant in the chorus. Paragraph 2 is about improving your literacy skills. And paragraph 3 is your willingness to reflect and learn from your mistakes. So if we look at the writing process, here's what I would recommend you do. So you answer the following in point form. So paragraph 1, are you an active participant in your own learning? Why or why not? Paragraph 2, how confident are you in terms of improving your literacy skills on a scale of 1 to 10? Why do you feel that way? Paragraph 3, how are you persistent? What are your study/practice habits? How can you develop a willingness to reflect and learn from your mistakes in this course? All right, so and then I also want to just remind you of the RapRock method for answering questions. So you can use this if you want. You can use this if you want in this in this assignment. So when we use the wrap-rock method, and remember, you don't have to use all of these, right? So when you answer a question or when you complete a paragraph, you don't have to use all of them. But I would recommend that you try, restating the question, answering the question, provide some evidence. So like one sentence can be, and that can often be your topic sentence, right? So your topic sentence can use words from the question to begin your answer, and then you actually answer the question, right? So you restate the question, you answer it. Your next sentence or sentences prove your answer. So it's like you give an answer, like yes, I am an active participant in this chorus, or no, I don't think I'm an active participant in this chorus, and then you offer some reason. So you prove it, you use ideas, you use examples to support your answer, you make connections to yourself, make connections to your own life, your learning, and then your final sentence of the paragraph could be, explaining why you think this way, sort of like making connections between these ideas and examples, and then conclude it and wrap it up with a good ending. So let's look at that first question, and it says, are you an active participant in your own learning? Why or why not? Okay, so this is what I would do. I would restate it. So and you could say something along the. So again, the answer is, are you an active participant, in this course and with your own learning? So you could just simply say, if you don't, I do not think, I do not think I am in. Whoops. So this is a journal entry. There's no right or wrong answer. So just be honest, be truthful. If you think you're an active participant, say you are. If you don't think you're an active participant, say you're not. And the important thing is to learn from this, right? To learn from this journal entry. So I do not think I am. Whoops. I am. Let's see. Can I move him over here? I am an. Whoops. I do not think that. I'm missing a word. I do not think that I am an active participant in this chorus yet. So there we go. I've restated the question. And so this opening sentence has done two parts of the wrap-rock method. I've restated the question. I've restated and answered the question. And so there we go. So that's a fine opening sentence, right, to this assignment. Now you've got to provide some. Now you've got wrap rock. So we've got R, A, and then the P is prove or provide evidence. Let's see. I'm already forgetting what the second R stands for. Relate. Okay, there we go. Okay. So in this case, proving through evidence and relate your experience are going to be kind of the same thing, right? So, we can do that down here. We can provide some evidence, right? So, I have struggled. How about this? Let's try an introductory phrase. Even though, let's see. Even though passing this course is important to me, comma, I struggle with finding the time to write. Okay, so there we go. So now I've got two sentences, right? The first one reads, I do not think that I am an active participant in this course, yet even this... That's why we read things out loud, to catch mistakes. Even though passing this course is important to me, comma, I struggle with finding the time to write. All right, so there we go. And then we're off to the races there. We got a good start. And then the last part of the rap rock method is, your opinion, explain what you think and why, and then conclude, wrap it up with a good ending. So, paragraph 1 is about you being an active participant in your own learning, why or why not. Paragraph 2 is how confident you are in terms of improving your literacy skills. Why do you feel this way on a scale of 1 to 10? And then paragraph 3 is how are you persistent? What are your study practice habits, and how can you develop a willingness to reflect and learn from your mistakes in your writing? So the best kind of writing is writing that develops an idea and helps the reader understand what you're thinking. And what you're doing is you're sort of relying upon storytelling techniques where, this scene leads to this scene, and it's like when you're watching a movie, right? Like you'll often have a scene that, establishes the character as, like, if you've got like a young kid and he's he's a teenager. I'm just thinking about a movie that my family watched last weekend called Chang Can Dunk. It's about like a young Chinese American guy living in the States, and he's like obsessed with basketball, but he's short and he can't dunk a basketball, and he's got this really rocky relationship with his mother. We've got these initial scenes of him like spending time alone and like pretending to be asleep so he doesn't have to talk to his mom, and they've got this really rough relationship. It's like you show that part first, and then you show them arguing and fighting, and then of course, like all movies, there's like a happy ending, and then they kind of reconcile and they learn how to talk to each other and make that connection. So the same thing goes with this writing assignment, right? So the first paragraph sort of sets up who you are as a learner right now. And then the second part of the assignment is talking about, what you could improve upon, what you could work upon. And then paragraph 3 is sort of like how you're going to do it, right? So it's like, here I am as a learner, here's what I want to learn, and here's how I'm going to do it, right? And so that's a very nice natural progression, right? If we look back to the article of the day, when that woman was talking about being out on the fishing boat, it was a nice progression. It was like, when I was a kid, I spent time on a boat, and my grandpa would tell me this. When I got a bit older, me and my husband spent time on these lakes. Now I'm a mother myself, and my son Gordon is fishing. So it's a nice progression, right? It's like her as a child, her pre-children, and then her as a mother, right? So it's a nice progression. It's that 1, 2, 3. It's a storytelling technique, and humans love story, and our brains are wired for stories. So that's kind of what you're doing here. You're telling the story of yourself. So I'm hoping that you can apply what I'm talking about today in paragraph 1 to the other steps in this planning process. So my step 1, I'm sort of writing and planning at the same time. I'm thinking about this paragraph, but I'm also thinking how it's going to lead to the next one. And then this is one recommendation you can do. If you can just read this assignment and just start writing sentences like I can, then you don't really have to use the free writing necessarily. But if you're stuck and you don't know what to write about, then I would suggest you use the free writing session. And if you could write down some point form notes, like, so when I read that first question, are you an active participant in your own learning? I had some ideas right away. But say paragraph 2, it's like, I think I'm like a 7 in terms of improving my literacy skills, and the literacy skills I want to improve are my grammar, my punctuation, right? So think of some specific examples that you could improve upon. And then maybe we'll just finish off our discussion here from that first step. So the second part of the RAPROC method is the opinion and the conclusion. So I would definitely have like one sentence that restates the question, answers it, maybe 2, maybe 3 that provide evidence and evidence and proof that backs up your answer. And then you want to end things off with your opinion and a conclusion, right? So, and again, so like the paragraph is following that storytelling technique, right? So the reader first knows, the reader first hears that I'm not an active participant in the chorus. Then they hear that even though it's important to me, I struggle with finding the time to write. And then, maybe it's like you could say like, I want to be a better writer. But sometimes I doubt, dot, dot, dot. And this is kind of where you could talk about, you could list a few skills. And then that way this first paragraph could lead to the second one, right? So if you're struggling with finding things to write about, then I would suggest just jotting down point form notes. Like if you go back to the main 3 questions here, if you're having trouble getting started, I would just go to paragraph 1, 2, and 3, and just jot down like 5 or 6 really quick, even just simple words or phrases about you being an active participant in the learning, why or why not. Paragraph 2, just jot down a bunch of skills and talk, and then list that number. And then in paragraph 3, just then just talk about just simply list your study practice habits, like how often you can devote to your studies per week, where you study, what time of the day you study. Are you a pencil and a pad kind of person? Are you all digital? Are you a combination of the two? And then how can you develop a willingness to reflect and learn from your mistakes in the course, right? So, and that's a really big part of this course too, right? So, I'm a strong believer that you learn to be a better writer by being a better editor. And you can't be a better editor until you understand the editing process. And you can't edit. I mean, the way you edit is you change something you've already written. So you have to just write something, get it on the page, and then you have to have somebody edit it. And then once they edit your work, you can see where they change it, and then you're like, oh, okay, I could do that, I could do this, I could change that. And then the next level is then you editing someone else's work, right? So unfortunately, with this course, the probably the only editing you're going to do is your own work, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? So I think best case scenario, you would be editing the work of other people. But if the only thing you edit is your own work, that's fine. And especially if you can do that under the guidance of a teacher like myself, right? So, and that's probably the way that everyone's going to learn in this course, right? So, so I think this RapRock method is very, very useful, and I think you should apply it to this assignment, right? So, so you're going to answer those questions, right? So, how confident are you in terms of improving your literacy skills, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, why do you feel this way? And then we could look at doing that just before we wrap things up for today, right? So for paragraph 2, try that RapRock method, right? So restate. I am very confident that I can improve my literacy skills if I can make the time or find the time to study. I rate myself an 8. Out of 10, right? All right, and so this is a very important point that we can close today's class with. And this is probably, I've mentioned this before, but it's probably the number one issue that I encounter when I'm marking student work, is that it almost never happens where someone writes too much, or when they go into too much detail, right? It's always most often than not, and I would say virtually all the time, somebody brings up ideas, and the ideas they bring up are great, but they don't expand upon them, or they will list they'll list 10 things they want to get good at, but they won't offer a specific way that they could get good at them, or they'll just be way too general. It's like, so here's my main advice. Number 1, be specific. Bring up 1 or 2 main ideas. Main points, I guess I should say. And number 2, give proof and examples or evidence. Bring up 1 or 2 main ideas and work those 1 or 2 main ideas from a variety of ways, and give specific examples and give proof and give evidence, right? So, if we think back to today's article, that woman was talking about fishing, right? She's talking about how fishing can connect people. That's all she's talking about. And then, but she writes about it from a variety of viewpoints, from a variety of setups. So do that in your writing. Stick to 1 or 2 main ideas, but come at it from many different angles with many different forms of evidence and proof. Okay, hopefully that's helpful, and we will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.